Um, this meeting is being recorded. So thank you so much for inviting me back to speak. I'm delighted to be here again with you, and I'm really interested and curious to find out more about what you did while in the 3 weeks since we met previously. I thought it might be useful just to start by just doing a quick recap of what we talked about last time and the homework that I set for you before we go into some small breakouts to just have a chat about how you got on. So just very quickly, let's recap what we talked about in session 1, which was really talking about digital strategy as an integrated museum strategy. So what do we mean by that? We mean that it is part of the physical experience of the museum, it's part of the human experience and the human interaction, and then the digital sits with that as well. And the three together, working together, make a total museum experience. We also talked about how digital fits into the kind of wider ecosystem of museum activity. If you think about digital permeating every area of museum activity, then you see how it then intersects with all of the different functions, the front and back of house, the skills that you need in order to be able to do the work, the technology and the systems that you need to be able to operate and deliver, and also the actual public visitor experience. So how do all of those things figure in these different areas of activity? And we talked a bit about how digital strategy can help you, and I think it's really important to just be reminded of, why doing this matters. It's not producing a document at the end that you then say, look, I've produced a document, and then you put it in a drawer and you never look at it again. What this should be is showing how your digital activity aligns with the wider museum priorities. It should provide a roadmap, a guide to help you to plan a development plan path forward for your key activities and a time frame for doing those activities. It should highlight the funding and resource needs that you are going to have as you think about developing this roadmap. And it helps you to demonstrate progress to your leadership and to your colleagues, so that at any point when they ask you, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? You're able to show on a wider roadmap, here's what we're doing, here's how it aligns with the wider museum priorities, here's why I need more investment or funding or new resource skills. And it really should be a living document. So this is a document that gets reviewed regularly, and that will enable you to respond to any changed internal and external conditions. So you can imagine over the last year with the pandemic that any roadmap that you would have had going forward, any digital strategy that you would have had pre-COVID would suddenly look very different during COVID and post-COVID. So this is an opportunity for you to review regularly and not just keep going with activity that isn't actually appropriate for the conditions that you're working in. And COVID is an example of an external condition. An internal condition could be a change in leadership or some kind of changed museum priorities. So all of this needs to be, reviewed and kept up to date, and it's an opportunity for you to come together with your colleagues to discuss this. We also talked about how you can start to develop the strategy for your museum and to really think about starting from where you are as an organization. Every museum is in a different place. Every museum has different priorities. So where do you need to start, right? You're all in different stages of digital maturity. Your strategy should reflect where your organization is today. Whether you're at the beginning or you're building on an existing strategy, again, a roadmap is critical to success. And it must be aligned with the museum's wider priorities and goals and be achievable and sustainable. There's no point in building something that once the project is over, the museum is not able to actually sustain and keep going. So important to remember, develop an approach that's appropriate for your capacity, your capability, your budget. Small, impactful change is better than overambition and inability to deliver or sustain activity long term. Really, really critical that you keep that in your head so that anything that you're developing, or any conversations that you're having with colleagues who are like, I want to do this, I've got this incredible idea to do this, and this. Really important to say, great idea, but actually, is it appropriate for the museum? Is it appropriate for where we are? What happens when the funding isn't there anymore and we've got this thing that we need to sustain? And we talked a bit about the key elements that it might be involved in doing a digital strategy. And what I asked you to do was try to draft a simple strategy for this session. If possible, to work with your colleagues or partners in other museums, and then share what you learned today at this session. So that's the bit I'm really looking forward to. So let's start with the first part of the task that we talked about, which was creating a digital strategy or doing a digital strategy audit. And what we meant by this was really looking across your organization and deciding where are you now on figuring that out. And this is, going back to that previous point around starting from where you are as an organization, and understanding today, in this moment, what is my museum doing, and how are we doing it? And some of the questions that I posed around that were, who's leading on this activity, and who else should be involved that perhaps isn't? Do you know which audiences you're doing this activity for at the moment? Do you have any idea if the activity that you're doing is successful? And if you do, how do you know? And what's missing? What would you like to be doing that you're not doing now? And if you're not doing anything, if you went away and found out we're really not doing anything at all, then why aren't you as a museum? There could be a perfectly good reason. It's not about assigning fault or guilt or anything, but it's interesting to ask that question, why aren't you? And if you are interested in being more digital, and I'm assuming if you've attended these workshops, you are or your museum is, then what can you do to change this? So what I'd like you to do next is I'd like you to go into small breakout groups and to just have a chat if you manage to do or start this audit, to perhaps share what you learned maybe around some of these questions. If you didn't start it, again, it's no blame, but it'd be interesting to know why. And if it's because you didn't have time, you were on holiday or whatever, is it something that you think you could do in the near future? So what I'd like to do is not talk about the actual strategy yet. What I'd like to do is just talk about the experience of doing this audit. And for those that did, hopefully, you can share, and it will benefit those that perhaps weren't able to do it or didn't get very far. So I put 15 minutes, but I think in light of the fact that this is a speedy session of an hour, just an hour, let's just take 10 minutes or even 7 minutes perhaps for you to share in your breakout groups, and then we'll come back and do a quick share out as a group, and then we'll do the next breakout.
So I'll just break the rooms up.
Yes.
I'll do it really quickly with about 4 people per room.
Yes.
Caroline or Mayan, if you enter, we'll move around between rooms. That's what I
Okay, great. And
sorry.
Let's aim to come back at 22 minutes after the hour.
Yeah, so in 7 minutes. Okay.
So speedy talking.
Yeah, I'm doing it now. See you soon.
היי.
את רוצה להיכנס לחדר שהוקצה לך? שנייה,
איזה חדר?
5. את יכולה להיכנס
אני אכנס ל5, סבבה.
שנייה, יש פה אנשים שנמצאים לבד בחדר.
כן.
ככה, אוקיי, כוחי
לא, רק אחד, רום אחד נראה לי.
אני אזיז אותך חדר. שנייה, אני עוקב אחרי...
וואי, ליאור, איזה מזל שאתה.
אני כל כך רגיל לזה מהכיתה שלי, הכל בסדר.
יש איתנו עוד מישהי שאני חושבת שאנחנו צריכים להזיז אותה לחדר אחר, כדי שהיא תהיה לו לבד.
רק שנייה, תלילה, את קיבלת הזמנה, את רואה, תלילה, רוני, דורון, קיבלתם על המסך?
אני כאן, אני איתכם.
נראה לי שאולי שאת באייפון, ראית הזמנה? אני אנסה לשלוח לך עוד אחת שוב.
איפה אתה שולח את זה?
בזום? זה בזום, זה אמור לקפוץ לך. שנייה אחת.
מה קורה כרגע בחדרים?
שנייה, הנה, תנסי ללחוץ על זה. רונית, את מצליחה? אני שולח אתכם לחדרים ופשוט אתן...
אני פשוט נוהגת, אז אני לא כל כך יכולה להשתתף. אתה יכול לספר לי מה הם עושים בחדרים? חשבתי להיות יותר מאזינה.
אני פה איתך, אז אני לא יודע מה הם עושים כרגע.
לא, אבל למה שלחתם אותם לשם? לאיזה צורך?
שם הם מנהלים את השיחה על מה שהם עשו.
אני אכנס לחדר 3, אני אבדוק מה קורה.
טוב, אז אני אכנס ואקשיב.
אתה יכול לנסות עוד פעם לשלוח אותי לחדר? כי אני...
כן, אני אנסה.
לא.
אוקיי, היי.
בהקלטה. ויעל, מאיפה את?
מארצות המקרא.
מארצות המקרא. היית בפגישה שהיינו אצלכם? סליחה שלא זכרתי, היינו עם מסכות כולנו, לא... טוב, אז אני מיכל ואני פרילנס, כאילו היום אני לא באף מוזיאון, אני עושה פרויקטים דיגיטליים עבור מוזיאונים. אז לצורך העניין גם לא יכולתי להכין שום דבר למפגש הזה, כי זה קצת יומרני מצידי לעשות אסטרטגיה דיגיטלית למוזיאונים בכלל, זה כל מוזיאון לגופו של עניין, באופן אישי, כשאני יושבת איתם, אז זה מה שאנחנו עושים בין היתר. אז אני חושבת שעדיף שאתם תדברו.
אז אני גם בתור מישהי עצמאית, אין לי אסטרטגיה דיגיטלית, אבל כן יש לי, אני חושבת, כמה דברים להגיד. כמו שאמרתי, דבר ראשון באמת זה לא מובן מאליו שבכל מקום יש וי-פיי או יש קליטה, וזה דבר שצריך לקחת בחשבון כשמתכננים פעילות. ודבר שני זה באמת להבדיל בין השימושים השונים, כשאנחנו אומרים היום דיגיטל, כי יש הרבה דברים שהם סושיאל בדיגיטל, והם לא צריכים להיות דווקא בתוך המוזיאון עצמו. ובתוך המוזיאון עצמו יש דיגיטל שמשמש בשביל תצוגות, ויש דיגיטל שמשמש לפעילות חינוכית, ויש דיגיטל שמשמש להדרכות, ובאמת צריך, ודיגיטל במקומות יותר גדולים באמת שגם למחירות, וחשוב להבחין באמת בין השימושים השונים שהמוזיאון לוקח, כי כל דבר הזה מבחינה אסטרטגית יש לו השלכות אחרות.
זה נכון, אבל אני חושבת שקרוליין צדקה כשהיא אמרה שצריך לראות...
אוקיי.
שלום.
היי, כן. זהו, אני איתכם.
אתן מסתדרות? אתן מבינות על מה מדובר? צריכות הכוונה, יד נוספת?
אנחנו...
אני מקשיבה.
אנחנו רק 2.
לא, יש פה יותר, פשוט אין בלי מצלמה, אז את רואה רק 2, אבל יש פה...
למה?
משתתפים.
תודה, מעיין, כן. אני שומעת, אני הקשבתי, שמי תלילה, אני מומחית ליצירת אתרים בטכנולוגיית וונדרינג, אני עובדת עם מוזיאונים ואוניברסיטאות בעולם. בארץ הטכנולוגיה נמצאת בשימוש במוזיאון ארץ ישראל.
נהדר. אתם רוצות להציג מי שהכין שיעורי בית?
יש לי רק שאלה, כי יש לנו עוד 2 דקות, אתם בכלל דיברתם על השאלה, או אנחנו עשיתם רק סבב הצגה עצמי?
לא מצאנו אחת את השנייה בכלל, לא הצלחנו אפילו להתחיל.
אוקיי, אז נראה לי אני שנייה קופץ לקרוליין ומעדכן אותה שאנחנו נצטרך עוד דילי. תמשיכו.
אני חושבת, ליאור, שאנחנו נצטרך גם אולי לעשות איזשהו שואו-קייס אחד, ומזה להשליך, כי הברייקאוס.
אוקיי, אז תדברו ביניכם על דוגמה אחת. אני יודע שעדי הכינה דוגמה, אז שנייה.
אוקיי, אז בוא נשמע את הדוגמה.
אני בעיקרון, אני מהמוזיאון הימי הלאומי, אני נכנסתי בספטמבר לתפקיד ובניתי פרוגרמה חדשה והתחלנו לקדם דברים, גם ברמה של החידוש של התערוכות וגם התחלנו לבנות אסטרטגיה דיגיטלית, גם פעילות דיגיטלית עדיין מאוד קטנה אבל מאוד נחמדה ומשמעותית אינברס, וגם עשינו קבוצת פייסבוק ייחודית. אנחנו חלק מקבוצה של 6 מוזיאונים, זה בעצם הדילמה המרכזית, כי אנחנו חלק מקבוצה של 6, אז יש לנו פלטפורמה מאוד טובה מצד אחד שהיא משותפת לכל מוזיאון החיפה, מצד שני זה מאוד מגביל את היכולת גם לפתח ייחוד וגם לשלוט בקצב של התכנים עולים שנוגעים למוזיאון, ספציפית למוזיאון הימי, ואני מאוד רוצה להשתמש בכלי הדיגיטלי כמשהו שבונה קהילה, שהוא יכול להיות ספונטני, שהוא יכול להיות ערוץ נוסף של תוכן. אז פה בגלל זה פתחנו רק במרץ קבוצת פייסבוק נפרדת בעצם של המוזיאון הימי, שיש לו כבר 600 חברים, ובנינו אתר מלווה ל5 תערוכות או מתחמים חדשים שפתחנו. וכרגע יש לנו בעצם מין יצור כלאיים כזה, שהוא אתר מוזיאוני חיפה, שבתוכו יש את המוזיאון הימי, שחלק ממנו זה כבר אתר חדש, יפהפה, פעיל, מעוצב נורא יפה, עם סרטונים, עם פעילויות, עם נראות מאוד מאוד טובה, והאתר הישן הוא נראה מאוד מיושן ליד זה, והטקסטים הם מאוד אינפורמטיביים ככה, יותר יבשים, ובעצם יש לנו מין אתר היברידי שהוא כרגע משקף בדיוק את המצב שהמוזיאון נמצא בו, שמצד אחד כאילו יש שם פן מאוד מיושן, ומצד שני פן מאוד חדשני ועכשווי. והדילמה שלי באמת הייתה איך ליצור את האינטגרציה, ואז כבר עשינו עבודה, כבר נפגשנו בתוך המוזיאון. זה היה קטליזטור טוב להתחיל תהליך של עבודה משותפת עם השיווק, ומפתחת תוכן דיגיטלי, אז מצאנו כמה פתרונות מיידיים,
אוקיי. אנחנו לדעתי נעצור כרגע ונמשיך עם קרוליין, אנחנו רגע נעבור אליה כדי שנוכל לעמוד בזמנים, אז אתם יכולות להמשיך ולדון באמת, ואני רגע קופצת למקום אחר.
So that would be, so I know we're out of time, but those would be my suggestions.
I didn't want to stop you, but this is already 23 at the
Let's stop.
So let's, I'm just breaking the room back.
Good.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So you have, 60 seconds to go back to the main room, or it will do so automatically.
Great. So that went really quickly. But I just wondered, could people just very briefly, could some of you just share back, particularly ones that actually tried to do the audit? I'd love just to hear, what did you learn? What were some of the things, some of the questions, or some of the things that really stood out for you when you were trying to look at the work at the audit? First of all, did anybody do the audit? That's my first question. Is that a no, or everybody's on mute? So I'm not sure. Did anybody have a go at doing it? Yes, thank you. Yael.
Hi. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is understanding that a digital strategy is a much bigger adventure than we set out to do. And I realized that at the moment, the education department, which I am part of, we're the ones who are mostly working on this, but it has to be a multidisciplinary, much bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What challenges do you see in that for you?
I think the biggest challenge is to get everyone on board and understand the purpose of this. And it's not just, it's getting that, and it's not just an educational or not just a visitor experience. It's also trying really hard to create a cohesive list of what are the needs and what is possible and not possible in one strategy, what fits in and what doesn't.
Yeah. And did you find that, or is there other digital activity happening in your museum outside of the education department?
So yes and no. I mean, we just opened a new website, so that was a whole, I'm not even sure if that's part of a digital strategy, but it has to be, in my opinion.
Definitely is.
Yeah, and so that's one thing. We do have an app that's basically, it's a replacement for the audio guide that we used to have, which is not part of the educational department. It's the curator's department that deals with this. But then there's a realization that it has to be, that we have to be involved in it as well as marketing. They have to be involved in this, because there's so much that we can get by just understanding who are the people who are using this, how long are you using this, where do they use it, which items are more popular than others, and so on. So there's a lot of learning happening.
Yes, no, that all sounds very familiar. And I guess one of the ways that you can bring people together is by, one, you've identified a problem that you're doing, education are doing their thing, other teams are doing their, and of which you should be part of, because their interpretation, they're communicating to the public. So of course, education should be involved in those projects. So it seems to me that a really great next step for you would be, using the strategy to maybe form a working group in your museum, a small group of people from representatives from those departments, and start to think about how can we join up, because you can actually add value to what they're doing and they can add value to what you're doing. So understanding that the mutual benefits, and that it is a whole museum activity, I think. So thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else quickly that wants to share anything before we move on? No, I'm just gonna just butcher
Noga?
Noga.
Thank you, and I apologize, my camera is not working, and this is one thing we need to take into account, that there's problem with the infrastructure, specifically in small museum. In the past, I was in charge of the forum of small and peripheral museums in Israel. And there are problems with infrastructure and with Wi-Fi and with historical buildings that has no service. And it's not so obvious that we can do digital activities in every museum and in every part of the museum. And beside that, specifically in small museums, that the staff is very limited. It's a problem to bring another person just for digital, because you need, according to the law, you must have curator, you must have education, and to bring another person just for digital, it's very problematic, because the budget is usually very, very small, and there's no budget in the law for digital activities. So this is another point I want to raise. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, it's not just Israel, it's a really familiar problem everywhere. And I guess I would come back to my point at the beginning, which is you have to start with where you are and what are your most immediate needs. And, you know, without a decent infrastructure, it is very, very difficult, as you have highlighted, to be able to do anything. And so for me, if I was working with you, I would be really thinking about, you know, what are our most immediate needs? Where can we make the most impact with what we have? And how can we start to set out a roadmap that moves us from where we are today to a better place, that we're able to do more things? And maybe that is going to take 5 years, you know, and maybe it's baby steps, but it's really understanding what it is that you as a museum, what is most important to you, or what is most important to, you know, any small museum in terms of serving your visitors in the way that you want to, whether that's in the physical space or online. So I totally appreciate your situation and just want to encourage you to not give up, but to think about, you know, what are the small incremental steps that we could take, and how might we work with perhaps other partners to also help in terms of skills gaps, in terms of technology, in terms of kind of understanding what we need to do. So that would be, you know, just some ideas. All right, so I had set out, I'm just going to go back and share my screen. I had set out to talk about digital strategy. Oops. What am I doing here? Let's have a look. Sorry, I have about 8 million windows open.
No worries.
There we go.
No, actually, oh, okay, now we see.
Yeah, you can see now?
Yeah, no.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So what I had what I wanted to talk about next, but I'm not sure whether we can get this far, but I think maybe actually it would still be helpful to do a breakout and just find out, you know, a little bit like we just talked about now, you know, what actually can you do next? You know, from your perspective, what might help you to start to put a digital strategy or a digital roadmap into place? How can it really support what your wider museum priorities are? Are there particular areas of activity that would be better for you to focus on? So for example, maybe it's social media, where perhaps you don't need the same infrastructure, technical infrastructure, but you certainly need content. Is it, you know, building on the website that you've just launched, or improving the website that you have now, again, either through technology or through content? Is it about creating more learning resources for your education, your educators and your students? Is it the possibility to digitize your collections? You know, where are you, and what would be perhaps somewhere positive for you to focus on within your capability, your capacity, and your budgets? Previous participant mentions the staff skills, you know, so that is a reality. So what do you need to do? Is it about trying to send some of your staff on training, to do training? There's a lot of online training now that's available that COVID has really helped. Some of it is free. Is there training through ICOM, for example, or through NEMA, the network of European museums? Would you benefit from more workshops with other museum practitioners focusing on particular areas? What would help you to upskill your staff? Where might there be funding available? Is it through the government? Is it through ICOM? Is it through the EU? Is it through partnerships perhaps with universities? Where are the other funding possibilities that will not only help you to get started with projects, but also perhaps help you with skills and help you with strategy? What do you need to do to be able to deliver this strategy? You know, who else do you need in the conversation? How can you bring your departments together? Where are those barriers that are going to stop you from succeeding? And what can you start tomorrow, next month, in 6 months, and in the long term? Because I guarantee you, however small you are, there is something that you can do tomorrow, even if it's just sending a tweet out, or putting a Facebook post in, or uploading a photo of an object to Instagram. So there are things that you can do that don't cost money and that are require very, very low digital skills in order to be able to do that. So I just thought we would, again, have a quick chat. Maybe, Lior, if you can do the breakouts again, and if we could come back at 45 to the hour.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes, so just be maybe careful with time so everybody has a chance to speak, right?
Yes, and I'm going to remind myself of that.
So this is a bit bigger room, since I know not everybody had a chance to do the homework part. So we basically divide the room to the big room to two. So let's just open the rooms and see you in 10 minutes.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I don't know, I'm guessing no one managed to get to the actual strategy. Did anyone actually start to write it or do the audit, or?
Adi, I think you have something to show up.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah. I worked about it, yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
I've started, and I'm the curator of the National Maritime Museum in Haifa, and it is part of a group of 6 museums in Haifa. So, and I just started in September, so I'm in the middle of a new program to the museum, and I develop the new story of the museum, and I already renovated some of the exhibitions. So I think that the digital platform can be very effective in transforming the new museum. Mm-hmm. And my dilemma is that we are part of these 6 museums, so we have we have a very good synergy between marketing and education, and we have also a digital developer, a content developer. So it's wonderful, and she already developed a new site, or a new website to the 5 new exhibitions in the museum, but all the other exhibitions, the permanent exhibitions, are still in the old platform. So there is diverse languages in the website. Part of it is very, very interactive, and with movies and with a beautiful design, and other parts of it are very old-fashioned in their language, text as well as visual. So this was my dilemma, and we had a meeting of the 4 of us, of the director of education and marketing, and me, and digital content developer. So we thought about some activities that we can do tomorrow. to improve the old part of the website.
Can you give an example of one of those?
I can show, but if I can share my screen, is it possible or not?
Yes,
now?
yes. 1 second, let me find you. Yeah.
If you could just take a minute to share, because I'd love to hear from other people as well, if they
So if you
רגע, I'm trying, you can? את מצליחה? אני לא...
מה, לשתף מסך? לא חושבת.
Wait.
אני לא רואה אופציה כרגע.
Try to do it again. It's supposed to be down. You see the icon with the share screen?
No, I don't see
No?
it. Wait, no. Just a minute, I will try again. Share screen, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so can you see it now?
Yes, great.
Okay, so this is the website of the Maritime Museum, which is part of all of Haifa museums. And this is the new area. I will click on it in a minute. And this is the old one.
I see.
So if you look at, for instance, this exhibition, you only find one. This is an extreme example, okay? But you only find one photo and the text, and that's it.
Yes.
But if you if you click here, then you are going to this site, and this is the new site.
I see.
And look how it looks like, and there are also videos with me explaining where you arrived at. And for every new exhibition or area in the museum, there is a section in the site.
Yes.
And it's very beautiful and
interactive. Caroline, what do you suggest? How she can?
I mean, I think what you've done is great in the sense that you haven't. Sometimes museums, like, because they think about perfection, they wait until every single thing is finished before they launch. I like that you have launched a new site and a new, very interactive area. And what I would do with the old content, because I'm sure the content is good in the old site, it's just not in this, it's just not up to date and modern like this. So what I would do is I would look at that content from the old and prioritize which is the content that you would most like to update so that you can migrate it into this new format. And to do it, pace yourself to do it. So set yourself over the next 2 years. I don't know how much content there is. We're going to do this bit by bit by bit. And so what we're going to need over the next 2 years in order to be able to do this is these skills, these resources, this technology, and make sure that it's you have a plan basically, and that you are moving forward, but you're doing it in a way that you can manage. So it's not trying to fix everything in one go. There's an awful lot here already that's fun to look at and interesting, and every time that you migrate that old content into this new format, it's something else to talk about and to bring your audiences in. So I think you're off to a really terrific start. But my suggestion would be to try to use, you know, this is your starting point. This is where you are today. And is to work with your colleagues on a plan to eventually move all of that content, the old content that you want to keep or repurpose into this new format, and start with which is the most important content for us to be focused on.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the most complicated thing is the writing.
Yes, and
writing of the material, because you need so much effort to put in it, and I'm so busy.
Yes, so I think, you know, that's the sort of thing that you can communicate to your colleagues. It's not, you know, in this case, it's not necessarily technology that's holding you back. It's content and people power. So you have to kind of work out yourself how much you can do that's reasonable, and to be able to communicate that to your colleagues so that they understand. And maybe in the meantime, while you're writing that content and developing that or repurposing the content, they could be working on something else that doesn't need so much of your input. And so you keep moving forward. But the point really is that if you're doing this as part of a wider strategy, then you're operating on many different fronts, right? It's not all on your head. Your colleagues have also got things that they can be doing. And you can see how that is also carefully mapped out on a timeline to show how, as a museum, together you are moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. We're going to leave the
break. We need to list a bit, yeah.
I'm on mute. Unmuted. So we had a great conversation. I really appreciated the Maritime Museum sharing their what they had done. Is there anybody? Would anybody like to share with the group just if they did try to do a strategy or try to have some conversations around a strategy? How was that? What happened? Let's start from there. Did anybody manage to have those conversations and start sharing? I mean, certainly, Adi, do you want to share just a little bit from the Maritime Museum perspective for the other group? I think you're on mute.
Do you want me to speak, because I spoke so much, and maybe there are some other people that want to share?
Well, maybe just share a couple of things, because half the group weren't in our group.
Okay, so I just I'm the curator of the Maritime Museum, National Maritime Museum, and we are part of a group of 6 museums in Haifa. I just started my job in September, and so I'm in the middle of renovation in the museum, of the exhibits, of new areas in the museum. So the digital platform is very important to me and can support the delivering of the new museum. So, but we have an old website, and now we have also a new website just for the areas and the exhibitions that are new. So I showed the group the different style, the different language, the different design and look of our new website in comparison to the old one. And I just put on the dilemma how to progress with that.
Yeah, and it was great because what we shared was that there's a lot of content that needs to be written.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a technology question. So, right. But that is an essential resource. So what can you do to map out a plan that is feasible for content production, content writing, and versus other activity that other areas of the museum could be getting on with, and that there are different things happening, that it isn't all sitting with the curator to create one person or whoever that content developer is in the museum that there is other activity happening. So again, a strategy can help you to really think about a more holistic approach. What can we be doing? You know, where can we be having the most impact? You know, while someone is, you know, maybe going to take 6 months to write some content, what else could we be doing in the meantime that doesn't need that person, that we could be developing or working on? So I thought that was a really great example of, again, a very common museum challenge where, you know, the same 3 people end up doing all the work. Like, we have to get away from that. And that's, again, why I'm saying to you, museum, that a digital strategy has to be a whole museum strategy. It cannot be the responsibility of one or a small group of people to move your institution forward in this area.
But I really think that writing is a problem that is underrated, but it's crucial, I think, because many of the museum staff really don't know how to write in a storytelling, and it's different, and many people want to help, but they can't.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a really, again, a very, very common challenge, because I think you've said the critical word there for me, which is storytelling. And as curators, you're not necessarily trained to do that kind of writing, and certainly maybe not in the digital space. So, you know, what we see a lot of, and I don't know if this is a position that you have in Israeli museums, is interpretation teams, is somebody who is basically that bridge between the curatorial kind of academic authority on the subject matter and the bridge between the public, and helps with that story. It helps to translate what the curator and the kind of intellectualism of the curator into a language that, you know, and compelling storytelling for the public. And it is a skill without question. And writing for digital spaces is a skill. It's not the same as writing a label in a physical space. So these again are about new skills in a new world that museums have to keep moving forward and have to keep identifying, and maybe through your digital strategy work at the Maritime Museum, you can help to identify those missing skills so that actually it isn't just about you writing content. It's like, I need help, but I need this kind of help. Where do I get that from? Who can I partner with? When there's a possibility to recruit somebody, can we look for somebody with these kinds of skills? You know, these are also new opportunities for you in the museum, where you undoubtedly will have skills gaps.
Yeah.
Anybody else that would like to share, perhaps from the other group? Leo, was there anybody in your group that would like to share briefly?
Yeah, so maybe Yael, do you want to, either Yael's, maybe you want to share some of your experience? I'm sorry to put you in the corner, so only if you're interested.
This Yael is working with Adi, so maybe we'll let Yael, the other Yael, speak.
I feel like I said everything I had to say, but I think it's the main feeling is that it's a question of budget, and one of the things that came up in the conversation was, are we growing from, is this a grassroots kind of evolution? Are we looking at what's happening, the needs of our visitors, and from there we're building, or is it something that we're going to bring from the museum outwards to the visitors? I think also one of the other things that came up was the understanding that it's not about children and youth that are using the gadgets. This is the new language, and even our, let's say, our majority of audience, which is senior citizens and let's say 50 and above, they also are understanding now that they need to get to know it. And I would say a good 80 to 85% of them have these devices in their pockets. So it's maybe 2 extra minutes at the entrance, but they do understand it. Ultimately.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing from you is, you know, and also picking up from your previous comments is, I think you are at kind of an exciting moment actually in your museum to really bring people together, to bring different departments together, and to really talk about this as a fantastic opportunity for the museum to really dig deep into those questions that you've just raised and really figure out what is important, what really matters, you know, what matters from your own department's perspective, but what matters from the museum perspective. And, you know, what would be the best ways for us to move forward to really help and support our visitors, and to start to think about, you know, how we do engage with these new technologies, or these, you know, you know, making better use of the mobile phone, making better use of iPads, making better use of AR and VR technology, all of these things which, again, need to coexist alongside the physical experience as well, and the human experience. Never, ever, ever, I never, ever, ever will say that digital should replace standing in front. There is nothing more thrilling than standing in front of a real object. Nothing. So, but how can we augment the experience? How can we add value to the experience? How can we give an experience to people who will never have the opportunity to visit us, but should know about our collections and should know about our histories? You know, so this is our challenge, I think, as museum professionals in the world that we live in today. And we do now literally have to live in 2 spaces, the physical space and the remote space. Brilliant. Okay, look, we've got 3 minutes. So I'm just going to share very, very quickly. I could talk for a long time with all of you for much, much more. It's absolutely fascinating. But let me just very finally share my screen, if I can, again, find it. No idea what I'm doing wrong here as the digital expert. There we go. I don't know what I'm doing. So there you are. You see, all of us struggle with technology. So really, very, very briefly, you know, I just wanted to say some common challenges that I've heard from you today. And really, I'm saying these so you do not feel alone in the world. These are really common. They're my own challenges. They're challenges I've heard from museums, you know, where you have amazing ideas and ambition, but they don't align with the capacity and the capability and the budgets in your museum, you know, so that is a common challenge. We have too many projects and too much work and not enough focus on really what's impactful and what are the priorities. And, you know, that's not just digital, that's everything that we do in museums. We are terrible at stopping things, but we're amazing about adding things. So it's really good also to do a sense check with colleagues of, you know, are we doing too much? And are we really focusing on the things that matter? We've highlighted this today, that the staff do not necessarily have the right skills. So this is a really great opportunity to identify, even if you can't bring those skills in now today, how can you plan for the future, and to think about how you might be able to bring those people on board, or how you might be able to bring them in temporarily, or how you might be able to partner with people who have those skills. Funding often drives one-off projects and doesn't really support a long-term plan. And that long-term plan has to include financial and operational sustainability. So, you know, where it's possible, we're all driven by the shiny, you know, money and the shiny one-off projects. But if they're not really going to add value in the long term, if you're not really going to be able to support them in the long term, then are they the right projects for you to be doing, even if the money is available? we had this come up, hard to fund digital infrastructure, but this is the foundation to your success. So, you know, where it is possible, where there perhaps is maybe government money or EU money, if it's possible to, or find a technology partner that can support you with this, putting that infrastructure in place, improving your Wi-Fi, improving the access where you can in built. And I recognize that old buildings were not designed for Wi-Fi, funnily enough. So how might you be able to navigate that issue or find a way around it? And it's often very difficult to demonstrate return on investment to your leaders with digital, particularly if it is infrastructure. People kind of like shiny objects, shiny projects, but those fundamental things which people don't necessarily see, they're kind of under the bonnet of and behind the scenes. It's very difficult to demonstrate success from those things. And again, I'm just going to say this because I've said it a million times, your digital strategy has to be part of an overall museum strategy. Otherwise, it will not be successful and it will become siloed, and it will be very, very difficult to overcome these challenges that I have just stated above. And really, finally, I just wanted in the last minute to kind of turn it back to you and to ICOM and to Lior and just ask, you know, what next? Digital is only going to get more critical to your missions. So what, rather than just one-off workshops with people like me, you know, what can you do now really to kind of go back and start to build on some of the things that you've talked about today and some of the ideas that you've had, and continuing those conversations with your colleagues? And is there an opportunity amongst this group to meet more regularly perhaps, and to share what you're doing and share your challenges? You do not need to keep reinventing the wheel. If one museum is doing something really well, then share that and talk about, you know, how you've managed to be successful. You know, what advice might you offer for another museum, or could you as museums partner up in some areas where you have similar interests? And what other support is available? So I guess I'm reaching out to ICOM now and Lior and saying, you know, is there anything that you can offer the group as possible suggestions for further support?
So I'll just respond quickly and say that whoever is interested in a subsequent session later this summer in Hebrew, maybe a longer one to sort of dive down into the challenges that you're facing and talking specifically at length about your museums, that is a possibility, and we'll be in touch. We'll take a week or two break to breathe, and we'll be in touch to find out who is interested. Then we can schedule it later this summer.
Great, thank you. I really would encourage you to share as much as you can. I know some of you have, you know, are doing projects, and, you know, again, you know, the Maritime Museum, you know, being able to show what you're doing and you're thinking, and also sharing some of the challenges and the frustrations is really helpful learning for everybody, because you can feel quite alone in this work, and you know, you are pioneering and, you know, disrupting to some degree. And so, you know, sharing in those experiences, and again, where you've been successful, where you found it difficult, can be enormously helpful for everybody. I know I have benefited from it, you know, particularly when I was in the UK. We used to get together in across the national museums on a quarterly basis to share the work that we've been doing, and we discovered very quickly that we all had similar challenges. So it really is a fantastic opportunity to build a network and build a peer community. And, you know, I think you've got in someone in Lior and ICOM tremendous support. And I'm sure, you know, really want to see Israeli museums be successful in this realm. So I do want to encourage you to take up Leo's offer. And I'm going to stop now because we're 5 minutes over, but I just want to say thank you so much to everybody, particularly those that have come twice to hear me. I really, really, really appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing, you know, what you might come up with next. And the best of luck with all of your digital endeavors.
Thank you so much, Caroline. We will see you.
Questions?
Thank you.
If you have any questions, so you can do it now, but I just want to say that you can meet Caroline again with the Education Forum next week with Shir Meller Yamaguchi. So whoever want to be there can send us an email and meet Caroline again.
But, I mean, if you come 3 times, you definitely deserve a prize of some sort.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, and also if you wish to have another session with Caroline, it can happen in the future. So just talk with Lior, and we will see how we can arrange it. And if you have any questions or suggestions about this project, you can send us an email and we will promote it as much as we can. So that's it. If you have any questions, I see there is lots of...
I have a question. Am I allowed to ask a question? I was just wondering through ICOM, whether you have thought about doing, I don't know if you do this, I'm not quite sure what your kind of areas of responsibility are, but you know, one thing to think about might be maybe next year having a small digital conference where you perhaps can invite or encourage, you know, museums in Israel to submit some talks about work that they've been doing, the kinds of things that we have been talking about today, but maybe also invite some external guests that can also share their experiences. But that might be another idea.
Yes, we actually
something we're working on all the time.
Yeah, yes. So next year it will be lots of activities.
Good.
And so you will invite, of course. It
wasn't to invite, but
stay tuned, Masha. Stay tuned.
Carolyn, I have a question that don't belong to, maybe because I'm not from the digital world. As a curator, sometimes I find myself that the digital world make me more work as a curator, because I have to write different text to this and different text to the wall text and different text to the press conference and different text to the catalog. And I find myself all the day writing about the same idea. And you mentioned that there's a different ways to write to digital. And I find myself writing about about the collection and about the extension exhibition, and maybe I don't have the right tools.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And, you know, everything that you just mentioned that you're writing for is a different audience.
Of course, but I ask you what...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The principles that you think that I have to think when I write to the digital.
Yes, I mean, I would say that it is a skill, because it's, you know, it's not the same as writing a label for in a museum, or, you know, writing a tweet, writing a, you know, writing something for a virtual exhibition, you know, writing something for an audio guide. That they're all different. And again, what I would say is that identifying that as a problem, and also how much time it is taking you, is not efficient. So thinking about who else in the museum could help you, who else could be trained to write, to take, you know, one piece of text that you have written about an object and translate that for different mediums. So it's not just you've written the core text, you are the authority on the object, but how could someone else take that and turn it into a different medium? I don't know if that answers your question.
Not exactly, because we have a person that charge on them digital, but he asked me to write for him.
Yeah, but what you could be doing is going back to that person and saying, here is my text about this object. You turn it into what you need for the website or for a tweet, or, you know, you need to develop those skills. And are they a developer or are they a content person?
Sorry?
Is the person you're giving the digital person a technology person?
No, just put it like this. Doesn't change anything.
I see. Okay. I think you have to explain then, you know, I can't write this in 20 different ways. So for this piece of text, who is the primary audience? And I will do it for those. I will do it, you know, in 2 different ways, but I'm not going to do it in 10 different ways. I do not have the time.
Okay, and another question that maybe in your experience, did you have rejection sometimes when you mentioned that the main idea is to be physical in front of the object, that this is actually the main experience that we can offer as the museum. There's less, you think, audience that come because they saw the exhibition in virtual tools or something like that, or did you find somebody said, I don't go to this museum, I visit the website, I think I know this object?
No, I mean, there is absolutely no evidence to say that when you put things online, it stops people from coming to see the real thing. I think obviously, if you are not coming to visit Israel, then having it online is the only way that you're going to be able to see.
No, I understand, but sometimes people in our, for example, in the registration department or something, afraid to put something on the website and stuff like that.
No,
So
you know what? No, your website is your shop window.
Yeah, I know that. But
and what you can be doing on the website, as we've talked about a bit, is not recreating what people are seeing in the physical space, but adding value in a different way, because you can add different voices, you can add more photographs, you can add other media, you can, you know, present the objects or the exhibition in a different way.
All this subject. Okay, sorry, I took your time.
It's okay. All right, I'm gonna let you go, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the day, and I hopefully see some of you next week as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye.
You're so
Bye
welcome.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye to everyone.
Bye bye.